Thank you for staying tuned to Daybreak on Trust Television. We have now come to that point where we would serve you the newspaper headlines across major national newspapers as we have them come into the studio at this hour. And as usual, we would begin with the Daily Trust. And on the cover of the Daily Trust this morning, we have the major stories. Ripples at 17 outgoing governors battle to install successors. The battle is getting interesting with the riders. PDP governorship primaries hold Wednesday, APC Thursday. 201 peak ruling party forms, 145 just for PDP tickets. Governor's actions direct assault on democracy, says Professor Kari. You'll find that story on page 5 of the Daily Trust. And right here on the cover of the Daily Trust is the story of the incidents in Day yesterday. You would find pictures of burned down vehicles and vandalized truck. Apparently, the truck that was involved in the incident, and other pictures of mobs, gathering after that clash between traders and Okada riders. And according to the Daily Trust, in a major belt here, below the pictures, 8 Fed killed. That's traders, Okada riders clash. In Abuja, you'll find that story on page 24. And below those, you'll find how Niger's yam farmers negotiate with terrorists to access fields. Malami Talent Silva readmitted to the Federal Executive Council. That story is on page 8. 80 billion fraud. FG suspends Accountant General Idris. You'll find that story on page 27. And directly below the name marks, you'll find the stories. Convention, Oshibajo promises Niger delegates free hotels and feeding. This is becoming interesting. Everybody seems to be providing one kind of what would you call it, goodwill, if you like, to these electorates in a bid to win them over to their side. That story you'll find on page 15 of the Daily Trust. And you have Kanu political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso in NNPP. Interesting stuff for you on the front page of the Daily Trust, especially the headline here with 17 governors making attempts to replace themselves. The need to continue to remain relevant to power even long after they had quitted an office seem to be taking the attention, seems to be getting the attention of everyone this morning. 17 of them who are also interested in other offices are now jostling to also succeed themselves in their current offices, and that is causing ripples right across the party fibers. And here, of course, we understand that 145 just for PDP tickets, and that's huge. And 201 peak ruling parties form. Amazing interest we seem to be getting from the stables of both the ruling party and the major opposition party this morning. And like I said earlier, you find pictures of the incidents from yesterday. We hope, as reported earlier in our report this morning, that the situation is completely under control and the authorities can do something to at least nip this in the bud. As you will find on the back page of the Daily Trust today, we have a leaching problem. It does appear that with every little problem, we seem to lose lives, and that is reducing the premium that we place on life. The security agencies have to wake up to their responsibility to arrest these kind of situations before they degenerate to loss of life and property, as we have seen in the case of Day this morning. Moving on to other papers, we will take the Business Day this morning. The Business Day seemed to be leading with stories outside the political arena, and the major stories here basically read: Nigeria's fiscal FS woes set to linger beyond 2022. You have Other stories right there on the front page. Airlines raise minimum fares above 50,000 as fuel crisis persists. The problem of Jet A1 fuel, as we have seen in the last week, have refused to go away despite several meetings between the parliament and the airline operators of Nigeria, and the plea by the Ministry of Aviation to have them find solution to this seem not to be finding any stable grounds. Now we are hearing that 50,000 naira will be the minimum base fee, to fly anywhere within Nigeria. We have other stories coming in from the business day. Seplat, ExxonMobil's $1.2 billion deal delayed on politics. Apparently, everyone is taking a backseat and looking at the scene and trying to see what happens before they commit huge funds into the Nigerian economy. Total Energy appoints bank to sell stake in Nigeria's assets, all in the quest, to diversify from this market. A lot of upstream players seem to be, making moves, to exit the Nigerian economy for other climes. Low demand, other forcing manufacturer to cut production. Yeah, low demand because there are loads of competing variables for the mega incomes by individuals, and clearly that is already taking toll on manufacturing. As you can see, a lot of manufacturers are beginning to slow down, and the implication for that would also be a cut on jobs because if you are not selling, then there will be obviously no need to produce, and in turn you have to declare redundancy, and that will mean people going home and not earning more money. We move on to the Leadership newspaper this morning, and on the cover of the Leadership this morning, we have the major story: 16 days to INEC deadline. APC, PDP in game of hide and seek over primaries. Clearly, the riders there read, 24 hours after opposition parties' adjustment of activity, governing parties reschedules timetable. We are not bothered by APC's antics, says PDP. Race between Amechi and me, says Badaru. Atiku vows to crush bandits. Kwankwaso Shekarau form alliance against APC and PDP in Kano. What's interesting about this alliance is the fact that both leaders seem to have emerged from the APC and the PDP, and today they are joining forces to dump the party that gave them opportunity to serve at the highest level. It will be interesting to see how this alliance, take life, and how much of that stake it is able to take from the ruling forces in Kano State. An interesting hide and seek. Every party here clearly seems to be marking each other, and nobody wants to take a step that would give a clue. It's like putting your cards out and allowing your opponent, to read your step and then take moves to counter them. It's going to be an interesting 16 days to INEC deadline, one that I'm sure all of the media newspaper houses in Nigeria will be taking steps to keep tabs on. Other stories on the cover of the Leadership newspaper, at the top right above the nameplate, you find PMB to decide returning minister's fate. That's according to the federal government. But interestingly, other papers are reading, disclosed this morning, as we saw with the Daily Trust, that Malemi, Talen, and Silva have been readmitted into FEC. And we have the story from the Accountant General. Alleged 80 billion fraud. FG suspends Accountant General. That is also on the front page of Leadership. FG approves 169 billion private sector investments in roads. This should be coming from the Ministry of Works and Housing under the tax program, of the federal government. Then we also have other stories from here. Abuja timber market burnt over woman's death. Fidelity Bank to support SME yielding results. You find stories of that case, that incident from the clash yesterday in Day. A number of those pictures as different from the ones that were captured by Daily Trust. Put together, you will begin to understand the magnitude of damage and the loss, not just to this individual, but to the country at large from the incident in Dede. We would take a short break, and when we return, the newspaper review continues. Please stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. Where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Thank you for joining us on Daybreak on Trust Television this morning. Now I can breathe a sign of relief. My co-anchor, it's now in the studio, having overcome the initial takeoff challenges from our house. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, if you like, Zainab Bala.
Good morning, Sunday. Good morning, Nigerians. It's nice to have you on the program.
We would move on with the newspaper review at this point, and we are taking the Punch newspaper next. And on the Punch newspaper this morning, the major headline here reads, APC governorship primaries, tough battles in Oyo, Sokoto, Rivers as 44,000 delegates elect candidates. That's going to be really, really huge. Amechi Abe supremacy battle results in gunshots. Chaos, faction, trade wars. APC denies zoning presidency, shift National Assembly governorship primaries. You find right beneath that the pictures of the governor of Lagos State taking salutes from uniformed men right there on the cover, and next to it is the seized Okadas. Yesterday, the Lagos State government, declared a total ban on Okada activities around certain areas of Lagos, owing to the menace that these riders have constituted in a city that is already struggling with access roads for available motorists. And we saw what a mismanaged crisis between Okada riders and other people could cause yesterday in the Federal Capital Territory. And right below those pictures, we have Hausa community seek reversal of Okada ban, promises Sanwo-Olu's massive votes.
Oh, wow, that's quite... I love you.
Amazing. Everybody, yes, is putting his strong foot forward. Nigerians pay more for kerosene than petrol, according to reports, and you find that on page 22 of the Punch newspaper. Ham sellers slits girlfriend's throat over slippers, dump cup. Wow. This is horrible.
My goodness.
This is horrible. You find that on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. 727 Nigerian doctors migrate to UK in 5 months.
700, that's huge.
That's a major health crisis. And to think that a labor minister in Nigeria once said that we have excess medical doctors and some of them should move into tailoring. Apparently,
well, it looks like
rather than go to tailoring, they would take their professional skills to other climes where they are needed. The UK, in my estimation, produces far more medical doctors than Nigeria. To think that we're even losing the few that we have to climes like that, I think calls for us to re-examine what's happening in the Nigerian polity. Osun Court affirms Adeleke candidacy. Baba Yemi to review judgments. You'll find that on page 14. 5-year-old people drowned during swimming lessons. Wow. If it's a swimming lesson, how did that result in drowning? EFCC arrests ex-NDDC boss over 47 billion naira. Wow. Every of the fraud now is in tens of billions of naira. Amazing why we are where we are. Anambra police warns against violence as court denies Kanu bail. You find that on page 7 at the top of the nameplate on the Punch newspaper. 25 presidential aspirants submitted forms, says APC. That's huge. That would be, by 100 million, that would be 2.5 billion naira in for the party in one fell swoop. Jet A1, others may push flights above 100,000 naira for domestic flights.
Well, I'll say some are already doing that.
We have to go and dust off our vehicles and driving skills again because
that's a huge amount.
This is huge. You'll find this and many more on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Look at those numbers of Okadas on the front page of the Punch. That's huge. A lot.
And even in the capital city, when you look at the daily access, down to Kubwa, you still find quite a number of bikers, on that road. And then sometimes you see police, mopping them up, but at the same time, they still come back.
You don't know whether they go to buy new bikes or they find a way to bail, if you like, the ones that have been seized. And what is even more alarming is the fact that they don't even use helmet or even reflective jacket. And you see the way they cross those highways, they drive against the traffic, it's basically putting your life in danger. Well, in a bid to survive, whichever way that is available to them. And so sometimes you wonder whether merely just banning these Okada riders, sort of solve the problem rather than provide alternative means of livelihood for them. That's huge. These are the major headlines on the Punch newspaper. So we move on to other papers on the Punch, and this time we will take the News Direct. On the News Direct this morning, it's a different story from all of those that have been paying attention to politics. We have ASU strike, reaction trailed NAN's threat to shut down international airport. We were saying here the last time that this seemed to be escalating. Apparently, they want attention at all costs, and they will get it as this is taking completely different route. We have pictures of the Tinubu's campaign trail as he stopped over at the Sulu Gambari's palace yesterday in Ilorin with major promoters of his campaign, as we could find there, the governor of Kwara State, as well as former governor of Borno State, Shatima, right there in the picture with him. You also find in other stories, APC presidential primary, it is either Amechi or me. No contest between us, Governor Badaru. That would be interesting.
Sounds convincing.
That would be interesting. That he even has an alternative to himself. APC Youth Wing announces Dr. Ohayiri as committee co-chair in vice presidential aspirant to town hall meeting. We have above the nameplate, someone who directs security operatives to enforce total ban on Okada. APC fixes new date for primaries, and Honorable Lasson and his warped knowledge of the economy. Apparently there should be an opinion, and you'll find that on page 4 of the News Direct this morning.
Really very interesting story, Sunday.
Indeed.
Now let's take a look at more, this time around on This Nigeria. On this paper, the lead story there says 80 billion naira fraud. After suspension, federal government bans accountant general from visiting office, and then Idris granted bail from custody. Yesterday, I saw quite a number of breakdown. A lot of people were breaking, that money down,
yes,
and what it can do for Nigeria.
Yeah, I liked one of the breakdowns. So somebody said, okay, 30 cents, I think it was, that broke it down to. He said, if you have to spend 50 million naira daily, it will take you 44 years to exhaust 80 billion naira. Wow. If you have to increase the spending to 100 million naira daily, it will take you about 22 years to do that. And they added those number of years to his age at 62. I mean, if you can imagine what that could do. And that is just merely on the part of expenditure. If you begin to drill down on what that can do. We saw a report from Katsina today talking about water supply and all of that. If you have to drill a borehole, in every community, 50 million naira should drill at least 50 boreholes for you. And that would mean you should be able to drill one borehole per community in Nigeria, 774 local government, apparently, with that kind of money. That's huge.
That's a huge sum. Some would say he was saving for the future, and then unfortunately.
What future exactly is left for him there? Maybe the future of his children. We hope that somehow we are able to make examples of some of these persons. Look at the case of the NDDC lady. That was the one that was picked up from before, 46 billion. So we are talking about 2 corruption cases of 126 billion naira. How much did ASU needed again to get back to school? Just about
truly, I think I saw
billion.
A comment. Somebody made a comment saying, I think this time around ASU should stay on their words and not go back to the classes, because if Nigeria has that kind of money, then I think we're not getting our priorities right.
We are not. Obviously, we are not. Okay,
let's take a look at some more stories on This Nigeria. You'd see also resignation saga, ministers in a fix, Malami Ngige, others fate hang in the balance. Lai Mohammed, Buhari will soon decide. And then you find other stories on This Nigeria this morning. EFCC arrest ex-NDDC MD Ekere over alleged 47 billion naira fraud. And then you see the story that seems to be on the cover of most of our dailies this morning, the one about Sanwo-Olu announces total ban on Okada riders in 6 local government areas. And then you see a pictorial there that shows you apparently, I think, crime suspects. I don't know actually where. I think the one is in the capital city yesterday. And then gunmen storm Ebonyi local government chair's house, kill 3 relatives, guard. Abuja crisis claim woman, Okada rider. And then you find at the top, talking business, foreign reserve drops below $39 billion despite Naira gains. These are some of the major stories on This Nigeria this morning.
Interesting developments as captured by but you can't miss the picture there on the cover with those amounts of rifle, on display at the force headquarters yesterday by kidnappers. If we could find this kind of sophisticated and making their way into communities, then it portends a sign for big danger, especially as we approach a critical time, the 2023 elections in Nigeria. I don't know what we can do as a country to mop up as many as possible this kind of illegal arms that seem to have found their way into our communities. And then moving on, we would take the national economy. The national economy today has as its major profit concentrating on the economy. Banks 261 billion first quarter profit, sign of post-COVID economic recovery. As CBN issues open banking guideline, they are dwelling today on the first quarter reports of most banks, and 261 billion for an economy that is struggling is a huge amount of money. If the bank would only come together and sign off 100 billion to us, so I'm sure this economy will be better for it.
Well, that sounds like the good news, from all of the bad news happening around the country.
Honestly, we can't afford to be struggling on all fronts. Tax credit scheme, FG, OK's 169 billion for reconstruction of roads. Access Bank emerges best performing stock. You find that on page 5. And FG postponed FAC meeting. Wow, I thought there were approvals yesterday. Which of them is postponed? The one for next week or the one that has already held? You will get the details of that in the national economy. And of course, the story on most headlines, on most newspapers this morning, the Accountant General suspended over alleged 80 billion naira fraud.
Well, Sunday, there seems to be a lot of, declarations recently about fraud. Some were saying, is it because the elections are coming through, or what really is happening? Why now? Why are we seeing all of those declarations
every time
now?
Around the election period, I think we seem to be hearing so much about fraud. But the only difference in this case is that it is not the politicians that have been picked. Or maybe the ones that have been picked are politicians in disguise. We don't know, because at some point, I think some platform rumored that the Accountant General was eyeing the Kano State governorship race. And then his tenure was extended graciously by the president. He's 62. He should have left 2 years ago. But somehow he got the nod of the president to continue. And we are not sure whether this 80 billion was over a period of 8 years. A period that he served, or it was just within this period of his extension. If it was within the period of extension, then it means if we look back, we may be looking at more than 80 billion. And to think that he has started this money around real estate in Abuja and Kano means some of those empty houses we are seeing around, we are beginning to honor the landlords.
Truly, that's quite
and then we take our final paper for the morning, and that will be the Nation newspaper. For today. The Nation newspaper, of course, is leading with stories around politics, and here it says, why APC changed date for governorship and other primaries. One of the papers described it as hide and seek. They move, the major opposition moves, and then they adjust, the other people adjust as well. You find that as a major story on the Nation newspaper, and above the nameplate you find Malami Ngige Silva talent soon to know faith. More endorsement for Tinubu in Kwara and Benue. Again, Lagos restricts Okada operations in 6 council. Ongoing legal battle likely to delay Alaafin's selection. And below the major headline, we have 47 billion probe. AFCC detained as NDDC MD Ekere. And below that here, court clears Adeleke as PDP candidate. 5 die in Abuja market fire. And we have also that story from the police headquarters with the display of arms and arrests made over people who are into kidnapping and all sorts of vices. Lockdown in 30 states over Nnamdi Kanu. Judge detains IPOB, denies IPOB leader bail. The case of Nnamdi Kanu continued to linger, clearly with no end in sight, as we have seen. Maybe till another day in court, and because of that, yesterday we saw the activities in the entire southeast were grounded. In fact, up to places like Delta, and some killings were even carried out. We hope somehow we find, yes, the escalation is too much for people who have to work every day to earn their daily bread. You can imagine how much damage this whole sit-at-home saga is causing on them. We will take a short break at this point. We'll return at the top of the hour to serve you more on the program. Please stay with us.
Morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital city. I'm Zainab Bala. It's 7 a.m. here in the capital city.
Indeed, 7 a.m. and a beautiful one here in the capital city. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Thanks for staying with us.
Our headlines for you this morning. Police operatives arrest 31, recover 61 firearms, others in the FCT. Alleged
80 billion fraud accountant general suspended indefinitely.
5 killed as traders Okada riders clash in Abuja.
FEC approves 3.49 billion for aviation ministries building. Now the major story at this the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has suspended the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris, over the allegations by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that he laundered over 80 billion naira. Daily Trust gathered that the minister directed that Idris should proceed on indefinite suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. The AFCC arrested Idris early in the week following verified intelligence that he allegedly raked off the funds through bogus consultancy and other illegal activities using proxies, family members, and close associates. The Commission spokesperson Wilson Uwejerim, in a statement, said the funds were laundered through real estate investments in Kano and Abuja.
Operatives of the Force Intelligence Bureau Special Tactical Squad have arrested 31 suspects in connection with kidnapping, culpable homicide, rape, and unlawful possession of firearms, etc. The FIBSCS equally recovered a total of 61 firearms, including 41 AK rifles, 8 Type 06 rifles, 4 light assault rifles, and 4 pump-action guns. Others are 2 locally made firearms, 1 G3 rifle, 1 Dane gun, 376 rounds of live ammunition of different calibers, and cash sum of 2 million naira from the suspects. Prominent among the cases include a case of kidnapping where the duo of Amir Lawal aka Kanu and Murtala Dao aka Mugala, both working in synergy with the kidnap kingpin known as Yellow Ashana, confessed to the kidnap and murder of 2 police officers and 1 vigilante in 2021.
Finland and Sweden on Wednesday handed in their bids to join NATO after Russia's invasion of Ukraine upended decades of military non-alignment. The applications were warmly received by most allies, but Turkey raised objections and the ambassadors meeting in Brussels failed to reach a consensus on starting formal membership negotiations. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg had promised the process will be swift and smooth, but Turkey would have to be mollified before the ratifications can take place. The members' push could represent the most significant expansion of NATO in decades.
Now let's move on to other stories. The Federal High Court, Abuja, strikes out a newly amended 6-count charge preferred against Nnamdi Kanu by the federal government following the withdrawal of the charge by the federal government. The withdrawal came after Mark Ezekome complained to the court that the prosecution is trying to delay processes by continuous amendments of the charge against the client. Ezekome told the court that this is the 7th time the federal government is amending its charge. Justice Binte Nyako concurred to Ozekome's submission, stating that Kanu is not expected to take plea on those newly amended charges immediately, and he needs time to digest them before doing so. Mardia Umar was there.
The much-awaited date for the bail application hearing of the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is today, but it didn't start without a little bit of drama, as some supporters of the IPOB leader were seen around the court and they were dispersed with tear gas by the security agents who were on ground, gallantly on ground, to make sure that citizens follow law and order in the court premises. That's the Federal High Court premises. Today was set aside for bail application, but according to the Defense Council, the government sprang up with a surprise, and this, they say, has happened for the 7th time. In the government's motion, they moved the motion that struck out 1 charge out of the 7 charges that is still led for the Indigenous People of Biafra's leader, Recall that in the last sitting, which happened in the month of April, the court presided over by Justice Binta Murtala Inyako struck out 8 charges out of the 15. So right now, what they are having this storm of issues about in the court today was the fact that this came out in the wee hours of the night, and it didn't give them time to actually serve this to the defense counsel. It created a storm quite well in the courtroom. And right now, what is going to happen is that these charges will remain the way it is, because it's going to be 7. And according to the defense counsel, he said that if they accept this 6-count charge, it might mean that they will have to go for a new plea, which might not be favorable for them. So the bail application, of course, today has been denied, but not completely denied, because in the wisdom of the court, they have to sit again and listen to the full story why Nnamdi Kanu skipped trial in the year 2017. And until they hear the whole story, they cannot make a decision. But the date, the story continues, or the court sitting continues, or stayed adjourned to the 26th of May 2022. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And there you go. In other news, the Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, Bashir Jamo, says the growth potentials of the maritime stakeholders for the industry would only be realized through the development of a system of harmonized port state control inspection producers for West Africa and Central Africa. The NIMASA DG stated this while addressing Chief Executive of all Maritime Administration, signatory to the Abuja MOU at the International Maritime Organization's workshop on port state control for West and Central Africa region for the heads of maritime administration in Lagos. Abbas Ibrahim Alibi now reports.
The Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, who was represented by the agency's Executive Director, Operations, Mr. Shehu Ahmed, identified the importance of effective port state control system to the efficient running of member state maritime administrations.
The shipping industry in our respective countries needs us to be fully and regularly on top of our game, especially as regulators, who must always be a step ahead of never-ending challenges that beheast the global seaborne trade, whether it's maritime security or the safety of shipping and capacity building.
According to him, port state control provisions are featured in the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea provision under the duties and responsibilities of flag state, coastal state, and port state, and it is also highlighted under enforcement in all major IMO and some ILO conventions.
On our part, we continue to work with Abuja MOU, the Federal Ministry of Transportation, and IMO to ensure that the port state control regime achieve the set objective.
Bashir Jamo added that NIMASA executes 4 legal instruments in keeping with international obligations, which include the Maritime Shipping Act, the Cabotage Act, and most recent being the SPOMO Act for the suppression of piracy and other maritime offenses. Also speaking at the event was the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Transportation, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, who represents the Vice Chairman of Abuja MOU, and Honorable Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi.
This brings us to other reasons for the training, which is to improve the networking loop of all the maritime administrations in our region, recalling that there might be the need at any time, a need to seek the assistance of the next member state to apprehend an errant vessel.
On his part, the Secretary General of the Abuja MOU, Captain Sunday Omorin, identified the need for continuous capacity building and networking initiative in order to gain the support of top maritime administrations, thereby promoting productive working relationships, which will in turn benefit the maritime industry in member states as well as collectively.
Postal control is a critical element in trade facilitation and by extension, the quality of shipping and shipping services in the region with direct implications of, if you may, direct consequences to national economies.
Captain Umorin also disclosed that only 14 countries are presently conducting inspection in the region and called for a campaign for effective inspection regime with focus on standard of training, certification, and watchkeeping. Abbas Ibrahim Alibi, Trust TV, Lagos.
With that report from Alibi from Lagos, we wrap up the news highlights for this morning. We will take a short break, and when we return, we will serve you details of the newspaper review with our reviewer already in the studio. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Thank you for staying with us on Daybreak on Trust Television this morning. It's that time of the day where we serve you not just the headlines, but details, analysis, and perspective as provided by our guest analyst in the studio. And this morning, we have no other than the general editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Malam Hanza Idris, who has joined us this morning to serve you very informed and enlightened perspectives on our newspaper reviews. Good morning and welcome. And thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
You're looking quite sporty this morning, I'm sure. I'm sure it promises to be a very warm and easy day, away from the types that are riddled with so much meetings and all of that. Thanks again for being with us. This morning we start as usual with the Daily Trust newspaper. And the major headline on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning reads, Ripples at 17 outgoing governors battle to install successors. We never go away from anything empty-handed, I guess. The riders there read, PDP governors primaries hold Wednesday, APC Thursday, 201 peak ruling party forms, 145 for PDP. If you sum those numbers together, you'll be talking about 345. That's a massive number. Everybody wants to move into the government house, if you like. Governor's Action, Direct Assault on Democracy, and that's by Professor Kari. You'll find these and many more on page 5 of Daily Trust this morning. And right below that major headline is the story from the unfortunate incidents yesterday at the Dede area of the FCT, where you have a conglomeration of so many activities from metal scrapping to timber and other building material market, and a tip-off of an incident from an Okada rider resulting in that amount of damage, that colossal amount of damage, and as reported by the Daily Trust, also leading to the death of about 8 persons. So the story reads here, 8 fared killed as traders, Okada riders clash in Abuja. You'll find the details of that story on page 24. And directly below those major headlines, how Niger yam farmers negotiate with terrorists to access fields. That story is on page 39. Malami Talent, Silva readmitted into FEC. Interesting journey. 1 minute you're a presidential candidate, and the next minute you are serving in the current government. I'm not sure which came first. Was it that they did not evaluate their chances before making the pronouncement, or they just had 100 million naira free money to spare the party primaries? We'll find out these and many more when we talk to our in-house analyst. And you have other stories there. 80 billion fraud. FG suspends accountant general. That story is on page 27. And directly below the name marks, convention. Oshibajo promises Niger delegates free hotels and feeding. Interesting.
Well, sounds
so,
like
well, let's see
people
how
are
long this free
hungry,
hotel and feedings will last. Kano political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso in NNPP. Been seeing videos of people carrying bananas and watermelon and whatever in their heads everywhere in the social media. And I was wondering, we will get details of this and many more. And like I said, joining us in the studio is the general editor of the Daily Trust newspaper, We would start with perspective on the Daily Trust cover today. What does this mean for outgoing governors to be interested in installing, would you call them stooge? Or success, to replace them. What are they afraid of? Why is it impossible to just serve out your time and move on? And allow the kind of process that brought you in to also determine, or in fact, allow the people to determine for themselves among the array of contestants, and we have so many of them, just from two parties, 345 of them. What is difficult in allowing that system play out itself?
Yes, from the figures there, you have an average of 20-point-something candidates.
Per state?
Yeah, per state. 20 if you put those aspiring under the ruling party and then others from the leading opposition. This excludes aspirants from smaller political parties. Yes, so maybe if you put, because you have around 18 or thereabout who that will participate in the electioneering. So maybe up to 40 per state if you include, because maybe PRP, NNPP, and all the other political parties, they will have their own. But we concentrated on these two without prejudice to the chances of others, because some analysts are saying any of the smaller parties that is serious will actually surprise the ruling party and the opposition party, because the argument is that Nigerians are looking for alternative because of one reason or the other. This is one. The question you ask, I think it is the way we handle it here in Nigeria, because all over the world, people would like to have worthy successors. But maybe our approach is the problem. You can see the APC and PDP, they keep playing mouse, cat and mouse. Yeah, because APC ought to have, start, final preparation for theirs tomorrow. But at the late hours yesterday, in fact, we were rounding up our production when we gathered that, they have moved theirs to next week. They want the PDP to do theirs first. Probably by the time they do theirs, then maybe they will change some of their aspirants. And the problem is that some of the governors, based on our findings, some years ago, they promised many other people, okay, I will give you. If you support me, I will give you. If you allow me to have my way. So they congested the terrain, and now they are approaching the point of no return. Yes, because we narrowed our analysis to 17 governors who can never be governors again. Because the Constitution said you can't be governor 3 times. So these 17, they are rounding up their last and final tenure. Yes. So many of them are really confused. Yes. While lamenting that they will leave the government house, they are also thinking of carrying on with rulership, if I can use this word, by proxy. So in some places, the governors pick their deputies. In some places, they picked speakers of the state assembly. In some places, they picked
complete outlier.
Yes, senator from who are in Abuja, and in some places they went and picked the so-called technocrats.
Some people have also said that these governors are hell-bent on installing, successors to cover their dirty game. Are you of that opinion as well?
But do they really cover the dirty there, because the only exception we have so far in the history of Nigeria is Borno, where for 4 years the governor and his predecessor remain on the same page. But I remember, I think ahead of 2019, we did a thorough investigation that since 1979, there was no governor that enforced his will on the electorate and then continue to have his way. You see the governors immediately after the handover, they will start having problem with the person they bring. Because while they want to continue to lead or to rule by proxy, the new chief executive, once he gets into the government house and, you know, understand the workings of the executive and the enormous powers around him,
It just snaps.
including the hangers-on, who will always also want to have their way, you know, because they will talk to him that, look, you are the chief executive. Why should he enforce commissioners on you? Why must he tell you that you should give contract to A, B, and C? Why will he tell you to give him the details of the FAC allocation and then advise you on how to spend it? Yeah. I think you should draw a line. Then you will see them fighting. And how many governors have we produced from 1999 to then? Meaning it's a big lesson for the wise. But as I said, even in advanced democracy, you can see, I think we saw how America's president, you know, campaign for their successors.
Yes.
But you see them not enforcing their will on other members. You see them on the same page, you know, then campaigning for one among them to succeed the outgoing president or outgoing governor. But here, it's just overnight. You see a governor, you know, saying, okay, this is my anointed son. And then before you know, they will start fighting.
Really very interesting stories. Another in you that I think is everywhere, you know, on our playlist this morning is the incident that happened yesterday in Dede. Some people have said that one of the drivers to that, you know, riots that happened there was the issue of Deborah Samuel.
It is very sad that Nigerians now think that nobody is there for them. They are angry and they transfer aggression.
Slightest provocation.
Yeah, because if you put side by side, I will not dismiss it, but you can see it's like transferring aggression. You know, how many kilometers between Sokoto and Abuja? If not for the proactive intervention, yes, of security operators. I want to commend them, honestly, because I was discussing with a prominent person 2 or 3 days ago. He said, despite their shortcomings, if not for the proactiveness of our security, we said that they are always late to this thing, but yesterday's event, I can assure you, if not for their proactiveness, it will have snowballed and consumed Abuja and then spiral to yes, neighboring states. Because, of course, the Okada rider was accused of recklessness, which led to the death of his passenger. Now, some people descended on him because of his identity. And then his fellow riders went there to protect him. They also descended on those people. And before you know, many vehicles destroyed, 9 lives Lost. Property was millions of naira. You can see the photos. We couldn't use.
Some are quite gory.
Yes, so we only shot this to serve as lesson that you can't correct wrong with wrong.
Right.
Yes, but Nigerians feel that the justice system is really not favorable. So rather than waiting for the intervention of, let me say, the judiciary, they just take laws into their hands because they believe that something that should be resolved within, let's say, 1 week, it will take 10 years. People will even forget about the case. So some, they feel that the best, which is, of course, not the right thing to do, is to, take the laws into their hand and then descend on anybody they feel that has offended.
That's an unfortunate incident from yesterday. And I mean, it wasn't just with Day. We were hearing of a similar thing in Lagos only about 24, 48 hours ago of somebody that was wrongfully accused of being a Yahoo, and they descended and killed him. And the friend who went to intervene was also killed. It's the cases of lynching as captured in the back page of the Daily Trust this morning by Abubakar Adam Ibrahim. Simply more than captures it. We have a lynching problem, incidentally, in Nigeria, and we have to find ways. The laws would have to find way to make example of these persons, to discourage further incidences. Before we leave the Daily Trust for other papers this morning, I quickly want a reaction to one of the stories also on the political sphere of Kano political equation changes as Shekarau joins Kwankwaso. What does this exactly mean for, one was of the APC, the other was of the PDP. Now, they changed places. Now they are joining forces to fight.
I think this is the mother of all realignments. Yes, if you look at the relationship between Shekarau and Kwankwaso, nobody, maybe a year back will think that they will come
under one umbrella.
Yes, under one umbrella because of the nature of their politics. They don't really cohabitate under the same
roof.
Yes, serious
ideology.
Yes. I don't know, is it ideology? I think it's survival of the fittest. They are now, they want to fight a common enemy. But you can see Ganduje is also not relenting in his effort because he conceded a lot to some people when he realized that, and he worked very hard to stop Shekarau from moving to NNPP. You earlier mentioned, the logo of NNPP,
yes.
Variety of
fruits, yes.
Yes, but we don't know what will happen. But Kano is a serious place, considering the population, considering it is the vote bank of the north, and it's a swing state of sort. Yes, it's a swing state, and politicians, not even within Kano, even in other places, they look up to Kano to fine-tune what they do. People are saying with the encroachment of NNPP in Kano, it will be a serious battle for APC because they have to do a lot. It's a long election cycle.
It is.
We have about how many months now?
About 7 months, 8
7,
months.
8 months or 9 to the D-Day. So anything can happen. But here, because Kano is our market, yes, and then we believe whatever happens in Kano will be reflected or replicated in many other places. That is why we keep our
tabs.
Yes, on Kano. We cover Kano thoroughly. But it's an interesting state, and you need to go to Kano because that smaller political parties are really making headway. I was told the history of NNPP, but that should be story for another day.
Interesting. We would continue to keep tabs on development from Kano. Interestingly, like you said in your opening statements, people are yearning for a different proposition.
Right.
And maybe NNPP is one of those. I'm tempted to call it NNPC. It's one of those propositions. We move on to the Guardian newspaper. And on the Guardian this morning, we have 2023 APC, PDP in mind games over primaries. In a fresh twist, APC adjusts timetable to hold primaries hours after PDP's. Says no truth in zoning presidency to Northeast. APC has no reason to zone presidency to the North. Tinubu's group kicks. Uncertainty in Buhari's cabinet as Malami Talen attend FEC after farewell session. Interesting. And Buhari to decide who stays, who goes, says Lai Mohammed. Interesting developments about all of those. And you would see from the Guardian newspaper a different kind of picture on the cover, a reflection of what the Southeast was like yesterday while Nnamdi Kanu was trying to push his way through a bail at the Federal High Court in Abuja. You have empty streets in Enugu and Umuahia, as empty as the graveyard, if you like. The street completely deserted on the orders of the IPOB sit-at-home arrangements. You have other stories on the cover of the Vanguard story, one of them which completely is replicated on most newspapers. AFCC detained ex-NDDC MD Ekeri, over 47 billion naira. And other news there reads how influential politicians get away with corruption by Falana. You find that story on page 3. No plan to ban Facebook over IPOB government clarifies. You find that on page 4. And court affirms Adeleke as Osun PDP Goba candidate. Court strikes out new charges against Kanu. Bankers decry inability to pass rising production costs to consumers. That's a serious one on the part of business. A different kind of twist to the APC story. Why do you think they are playing this hide and seek, this cat and mouse game? Why are they trying to second guess each other? If they are sure of their candidate, why not just go ahead and hold your process and let your candidates emerge and begin the actual preparation?
You see, politicians are funny people. Yes, and they always look at the weakness of their co-contender, because it's like chess game. You know, you look at the movement of your colleague and see the weak link, so that you take advantage of that. You can see we have reported that days ago that APC is really working towards choosing their presidential candidate from the North, because based on our findings, it may not be true, it may be true, but you know, when PDP opened up the space and said contenders from across the country can vie for the presidency, the conclusion by analysts is that the opposition party wants to, you know, pick its presidential candidate from the North. Of course, people argue that there is balance of power between North and South, but it is obvious politicians know that a lot of votes, you know, come out from the North, and most likely they want to take advantage of that to regain power, which they lost about 7 years ago. And people in APC, they are saying if they take the risk of
going to a different
you know, respecting the gentleman's agreement of ceding power to the South, the tendency is that PDP will win the election before noon on the election day. Yes, and this is why you see them playing the cat and mouse that we mentioned earlier. They want the PDP to, do theirs first before they pick their own. But I really want to thank INEC, because INEC, stood its ground that they just have to
conclude the process
within the first week of June. So let them continue
with the dilly-dally. There is no more than 24 hours in a day.
Exactly.
And very quickly, we saw the images of cities in Enugu and Umuahia, how desolate those cities have become on the orders of IPOB, and the impact this could be having on livelihood, on businesses, especially, for the small akara trader who needs to grind those beans and make those bean cake and make a difference of maybe 1,000 naira to feed her wards that day. What does this continuous sit-at-home practice mean for the entire Southeast?
Some people, are saying it's really a subtle blackmail. Beyond Nnamdi Kanu, those behind this feel that the only way to get power, political power, is through this blackmail. You remember the pre-1999 episode, which was the aftermath of the June 12th, issue, exactly, that culminated in ceding power to the West, to the Southwest, in order to, assuage the feeling of people from that part of the country. But I don't want to believe that, but people are really accusing the governors, whether we like it or not. Even if you say the power is vested in the hands of the federal government, governors really have role to play. If you have, authority within a constitutionally recognized authority, then it's really a recipe for chaos. And you can see it is the downtrodden that are really paying the big price. Yes, people really believe that if governors of this, the 5 governors of, in the Southeast, the senators, the members of the House of Reps, traditional rulers, if they come together and say no to this, there is no way
to continue.
Yes. Why are we not witnessing this in the South? There are, there are contiguous states there.
Yeah.
Why are we not witnessing that in the South? It's a big question.
Truly.
So this boils down to the determination of those in authority to stem the tide. But I don't think if it is really good to allow miscreants, to hold
state hostage.
States hostage. Yeah, it's really sad.
Really, really sad, I must say. Now let's take a look at some more papers talking about the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And the Nigerian Tribune leads with the story about alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Federal government suspends Accountant General, postpones FAC meeting. You'd find other stories also on the Nigerian Tribune right at the top. NANS threatened to shut down international airports nationwide. Begs Atiku, Tinubu, others to raise money to meet ASU demands. You'd find other stories on page 29. Lagos bans Okada in 6 local government areas, 9 LCDAs. Mayhem as Okada riders set Abuja market ablaze. You'd also see Oshun Guba, court affirms Adeleke as PDP candidate. Plateau APC Guba primary, gang up against Lalong's preferred aspirant. And on page 16, APC presidential primary, it is either Amechi or me, no contest between us. This is coming from Jigawa State Governor. You'd also see other stories. Makinde Abdurazak, flag of 76.6 kilometers Ogbomosho Isheyu Road. And then gunmen kill security guard, relatives of Lagos local government boss in Ebonyi. And on page 15, Rivers APC, many injured at Secretariat as police shoot to disperse protesters. And then you see a picture there of arrests made by the Nigeria Police Force of 2 over kidnap of Greenfield Varsity students, recover 61 firearms, 376 ammunition, 41 EIL rifles, 2 million cash, and others. And then the story that seems to be making headway in all the papers this morning, the one about APC adjusts timetable, shifts convention primaries dates, silent on zoning arrangement. And on page 2, Malami talent show up at FEC. Now I would like for you to comment on this the story about NANS threatening to shut down international airports nationwide, and they're also appealing to Atiku and Tinubu to raise money, to settle ASO.
The second leg of the demand, contradicts
the first.
The first, yes. Here, you want to shoot airports, and probably they know they can't block roads because those that matter no longer travel by road. So the only way is to shoot the airport so that nobody
flies.
Yes, I really sympathize with our students, because if you look at how people are playing with dollars, look at how the two leading political parties wrecked in billions within hours.
Like Sunday said, 100 million is like urgent 2K.
Yes. And what they said, the leaders of, especially the leading party, they said is to scare away on serious contenders. That was why they, upped the game. But you can see how, the contenders, demystify the threat. How many people bought the
25
yes.
in one party?
By the way, and then look at the case of the accountant general, 80 billion. When we were children, they said if you have 1 billion, you will continue. If you are spending, is it 1 million or 100,000 until you die? And even if you will be 80 years, you will be rich, But here we are. So what the students are saying is, why not block these leakages? Some of these politicians, what they are spending, why not donate the money and rescue, the ivory towers? So I want to plead with the politicians to support the opening of our universities. But we discussed this here weeks back, that there are many ways to address the challenges afflicting our universities. Because you sometimes you wonder whether Nigeria lives in a different planet. Because we now go to Niger, because no strike in Nigerian universities. We go to Uganda, we go to Benin Republic, we go to US, we go to Malaysia, we go to India, Singapore. We go to China. And some of these countries, they even give scholarships to Nigerians. So what is really the problem with our system? Is it the acts establishing the universities? So I don't even see the system working, even if Nigeria is to, surrender maybe the whole budget of a certain year for the universities. It will not solve the problem. True. Because we have to look at the rules guiding the activities of these universities and then change them in line with best practices. That is the summary of it. Because personally, I don't really believe in tuition-free universities. I said it here, and it was based on our findings, based on our discussions. How much do you pay for your child attending nursery school? Some people pay up to 1 million for their toddlers attending kindergarten. But when it comes to university, you say that it is tuition-free. It's really, an impossibility. People should be, and not everybody should go to university. I keep saying, because we always ask people to contextualize some of these things. 80% of the Chinese you see working in Nigeria, Indians working in Nigeria, they are not graduates.
They're not.
You know, they were well equipped at secondary school level to become self-employed or to become serious artisans, you know, to have technical skills that they can take care of their family. But by the time you said every other person must acquire a degree, then who will now be the technician? We converted all our polytechnics to university. It doesn't work like that. As I said, Nigeria, we pretend to live in a separate planet, and that is why we have existential problem. But we must have to key into global best practice on how to manage our universities, how to manage our polytechnics, how to manage our technical schools, so that at the end of the day, you know, we get it right. Yes.
Very unfortunate one there. Before we leave this, we also have, incidentally, all of the papers seem to have very serious pictorials on the cover of the papers. First, it was Daily Trust with the mayhem in Day, and then we saw the silent streets with the Guardian newspaper, and with Tribune, we see those arrests of people who are linked to the Greenfield kidnapping with this amount of guns and catchy, you know, from just one group. And you begin to wonder how seriously militarized our forests and hinterlands are in Nigeria because of the activity of the proliferation of small arms. What can we do to stem this tide? How do we fight terrorism, bandits, and proliferation of small arms at the same time in this country?
We must secure our borders. Because if people have access, you see, drugs and weapons, they are some of the things you get with ease, especially if you have the resources. Now, these bandits, considering the money they are getting on daily basis, you know, they don't build houses. In most cases, because if you arrest them, they rarely show you, you know, serious assets that this is what
they've been doing.
Exactly. So what they use the money for is to buy more arms, buy the ammunition, buy drugs, and then chase women. This is what they do because they know that, you know, sooner than later they will be apprehended. So it's just to equip themselves with more weapons, take drugs so that they can, you know, inflict maximum injury. Yes, on symbol of authority and all that. But we will not address this without addressing the root cause, because if you keep, you know, cutting is it the head or yes, you have to address the problem. In Nigeria, people import arms using donkeys, using camels, you know, because you have countless unmanned borders. So we must address that and then mop up the arms, yes, because if people have access to arms, you know, their propensity to commit crime is extremely high. And when you compare these arms with what our security operatives have, it's pathetic. Our security operatives must always approach these miscreants from position of strength, meaning they should have superior
firearms.
Yeah, firearms, so that they can tackle them the way they should. But honestly, without securing our borders, there is no way we will address crimes and criminality in Nigeria.
We move on quickly to these day newspapers, and the major headline is still staying with politics. The 23 APC members seeking to replace Buhari. You'll find all of the pictures there on the cover, starting with the vice president and then to the Senate president, to Ahmed Tinubu, to the former governor of Ogun State, down to Professor Ayade. Quite a number of former governors on the list, former and serving governors, Ogbonnaya Onu, The Minister for State for Education featuring prominently on that list, and Governor Yaya Bello. And Tunde Bakari, of course, the outlier from there, and former Senate President Ken Namani. Badru is there. He has said the race is between him and Amechi. Let's see how that goes. And interestingly, we also have Governor Yerima, who, among several other people, also has the blessing of the president. It's going to be a very interesting. The president clearly has blessed these 23 candidates. Let's see what happens to them in the next couple of days. And we have right there above the nameplate, returning ministers, Buhari to determine Silva Ngige talent's fate, says Mohammed. I don't know what else is left to be determined. They were at the council meeting. I think that is sufficient confirmation, if any. But let's see how that plays out. And as Nigeria struggled with growing commodity prices, UK inflation hit 40 years high. Incidentally, all the inflations in Nigeria seem to be imported inflations. If prices go high abroad, it goes high here. If things happen here, it goes high here. There is no hiding place for the Nigerian citizen, incidentally. And then we have federal government declined consent to Seplat Mobil oil producing asset acquisition deal. There have been efforts for Mobil to exit the Nigerian upstream sector by selling some of its assets to Seplat, and the government would not consent to that deal, owing to a number of factors. If you want more details on that, you'll find it on page 51 of This Day newspaper. And right there, it's a belt below the major stories. 2023, APC implosion, eminent over move to keep presidency in the north, Patif chieftains warns. Interesting stories from This Day newspaper. But I would like you to, we are now putting faces to these 23 persons. It's amazing, cutting across everywhere from the country. From every part of this country. What do you make, generally speaking, of this? Well, like we have in the football circle, this 23-man team.
All blessed by the president.
I mean, we know the dates for the primaries have been set. We know how much money, in quotes, seem to be flying around. We know how difficult it has been to get hotel rooms in Abuja right from yesterday.
Everywhere.
Because they've all been taken over. I wonder how many rooms one delegate will sleep in. He probably will have to do 3 hours in one hotel and move on to the other hotel. What does it feel like now that we are putting faces to these 23 persons? Does it reduce the anxiety, or we are now moving properly into that nerve-wracking phase?
Moment.
The first take is that there is no single unfamiliar face there.
Yes.
This is the first message, meaning it is a serious challenge for the youth, because
the dancing governor from Rivers will tell you.
Seems to be having a lot of fans. He has quite a number of fans.
This is one. Myself and our political editor, we were trying to put together a certain story a few days ago. So we met one key actor in the ruling party. We were discussing off the record. We said, please, what is the body language of the president? Because almost all these people, they have visited him, and when they come, you see them smiling as if they will be sworn in the next day. Do you know what they was? He laughed. He said, do you think Buhari will endorse Yusuf?
That's his son.
So I look at I wanted to figure out, Yusuf, meaning his son. He said, do you think he will endorse Yusuf? So maybe, above all, despite maybe the shortcomings of the president and all that, so you cannot take this away from him. So far, he has played the father figure thing. People will dismiss him, people will accuse him of anything, but you can see, as far as allowing the democratic space to thrive, he has done well. Even though people are saying by now, his body language should be understood. But he has kept every other person guessing. I can assure you, even within the APC, they don't really know who is the favorite of the president. But the takeaway is that he said he kept that close to himself, in one of his interviews. But we know the D-Day is approaching.
Yes.
In the next 1 week.
And we cannot wait to see how that
Yes,
plays
in the
out.
next 1 week. Because yes, in the next 1 week or 10 days, we must know
who the anointed
Who
child
the
is.
anointed is.
anointed. So it's really interesting.
I was watching a short clip by, now I don't know which is the proper preface. Is it the 16th Emir? No, or the former Emir? I'm not sure now. But Sanusi Mohammed II at an investment forum in Nasara a couple of days ago, and he was saying to the governor, I pray that the good Lord would bless you with enough investment as he has blessed the APC with presidential
I remember. Yes, I
That's
remember in between 2006 and 2007. When Obasanjo was the president, he too, somehow left the space. Yes, because I know that many governors visited us. We were reporting from this. I was reporting from Adamawa, I think. Many of the PDP governors, they kept visiting, they kept campaigning and all that, consulting. And all of them thought that he was with them. At the end of the day, he picked
an outlier.
Yes, because Yar'Adua never showed any interest. I remember some of the contenders were telling us that was the time they even got Yar'Adua's phone number. Because he wasn't bothered. He was there in Katsina, and we don't know why Obasanjo went for him.
And behold, he made an amazing president.
Yes, he was
people,
indeed. But you see, it was when he died. When he was there, people were just accusing him that he was a provincial president. He don't even know Kanu.
And he admitted that, at that time. He said the process that brought him into power was not perfect.
But it was the listener par excellence.
Yes. Yesterday we said we should do a story on how contenders are even doing photo ops with his mom, just to associate themselves with him, because he's no longer here. So maybe it will be after Buhari, maybe long after he is gone, maybe settle in Daura or in Kaduna, that people will see the wisdom
in some of the things,
in some of the things he did, especially in, as I said, in allowing the competition. Because fair enough, I said it earlier that no serious person, even at home front, you groom somebody to take over from you so that your empire will not collapse. Yes, I think it's part of human expectation, that you should have somebody to take over from you. But allowing the competition is good. Probably it is going to be, we don't know whether Buhari will make a choice at the Eagle Square, maybe. That is where he will choose his best man.
Interesting insights from the general editor of the Daily Trust. I wish that the government was making some taxes from those 100 million, the way they tax the small milk that we buy in the market. Maybe we would have made some more money for activities. So we want to thank you for finding time to share your thoughts with us on the newspaper review this morning on Daybreak on Trust Television. We hope you have a delightful day ahead. This is where we draw the curtain for the newspaper review this morning with Malam Idris. What am I saying? Malam Hamza Idris, the general editor of the Daily Trust newspaper. We would take a short breather at this point.
A situation where you find that a person look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Because I have said that